today on a pretty, what seemingly off-topic uh, topic for our lunch with Green Thumb webinars. I know most of you are interested in gardening or our friends groups I saw taking care of your local parks. So I know we're all interested in getting our community green spaces to be the best they can be. We're interested in being outside and making them just wonderful places. So while our webinars have been focused mainly on like how to grow things and how to nurture things, mainly plants and those types of living things, I love that we can also make space for just nourishing ourselves and making sure that we are also taking care of us as living things, and that includes our teams. So thanks for joining the off-topic webinar today. We use germination in the title, not just to have a clever gardening reference and satisfy my personal interest of having everything rhyme, but also because good communication is a really necessary ingredient, nutrient, if you will, for your group and any group that's working together. If you aren't communicating well, then you simply will not grow, and you won't accomplish as much together. So, and I also want to say that my mouse has been behaving badly, and it's clicking buttons that it shouldn't be. So I really apologize if in the middle of this my video goes out or I'm muted. I don't know what is possessing my mouse right now, but just bear with me. Thank you. Okay, so I want to get started by just talking about a phrase that a lot of us know. There's no I in team. And this has become so common and popular in our society to use this phrase because it represents a frustration that we all feel when someone is putting themselves first above the group, right? Like you may want to say this to someone or think it in your head when someone is acting selfishly and they're not behaving as a team player. I like this phrase, but I think that it's a big mistake to just stop there. While there is no I in team, there's still a me. So we're not off the hook as individuals. Like you as an individual are a huge part of a team. Like that's what a team is. It's made up of individuals. And so while it's no good for someone to to be self-centered and only act for themselves, it's also no good for an individual on a team to not know how to best show up on that team, right? Like there needs to be that awareness. So there needs to be some time given to the me in team. And if, whoops, there we go. If if none of your members of your team know, right? Like what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to show up? How, what is the best way for me to participate in this team? If they don't understand that, then they won't do it. Right? Like we need to have that understanding of anything in order to actually act on it. And so it's not, I mean, it's not that we're not smart. It's not that we're unintelligent. It's simply that we just don't invest enough time to figure it out. And this is really common in a lot of different types of teams and groups, like volunteer groups like yours, sports teams, at a construction site, in an office. Like there's a lot of what are we doing? Right? And again, it's not because each of us, can't figure it out. It's that we often just don't have the time, or we don't invest the time to figure it out. So I want to have you guys answer a question about yourselves that can be helpful to your group or your team. Basically, ask yourself, how do I like to communicate? Or what are the best ways to communicate with me? So, for example, I like to make a connection with whoever I'm speaking with. And the best ways that people can connect with me or communicate with me is through text messages and being open and honest with me. That's how I receive information the best way. So I want you to give it a try. Grab a paper and pen if you want to write your thoughts down. But we'll just take a good 3 minutes. And, if you're having a tough time thinking about what you like or how you like to communicate, because it's really easy to focus on what you don't like, right? We all know what we don't like. Then try thinking of what would make that better. So if you don't like being interrupted, right? Who likes being interrupted? And you might like it when you've had a chance to be respectfully heard. That might be a way to reframe it. So go ahead, spend some time, and then we'll circle back. We've got about a minute left. If you are so inclined, you can share with us, how you like to communicate in the chat box. Already got a nice bit of sharing going on, so feel free to join in. Okay, my timer just went off. All right, so we heard from a number of people in the chat. Thanks so much for sharing. Naurin likes, he feels like if someone starts talking to me with a smile, I get a positive energy from them, and that way I feel comfortable to talk with them. Sohair, number 1, nice greetings. Oops, where I lost it. 2, text. Number 3, emails. Number 4, face-to-face with smile. And number 5, phone calls. Thank you. Casey appreciates feeling heard, respected, having her ideas and feelings acknowledged, even if we don't agree. Appreciating the different forms of communication depending on the topic or context. So it sounds like you like the flexibility. A short email or text setting up a time to talk over phone. So you need that prep time, or at least a heads up before getting thrown into a conversation. And yeah, great. Thanks, Casey. Mark, you prefer real-time communications in person or phone, and you like the person to be inquisitive, not to have made up their minds. Totally. I appreciate that too. We'll talk a lot about that today. Carolyn, you really love when you're given space to express yourself. That's a great thing to know about you. And I hope that you are given the space to express yourself. And Chantel, I still prefer phone and then email. So texting has its place for immediate responses and gratification, but you find it intrusive. That's good to know. Oh, so you have a 3 texts rule. Nice. If what you want to discuss takes more than 3 texts, pick up the phone or schedule a live time to talk. Chantel, you also find that more could be accomplished quickly by phone than texting and waiting for responses and vice versa. I agree. Lourdes, text first, then call. Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate you participating. And just in that chat alone, we learned that there's a diversity of my mouse, I swear. There's a diversity of preferences when it comes to communication, right? And so just in this, pretty small group as it is, a lot of diversity. So, and if we didn't know that about one another, how could we possibly help one another to hear and understand? So just understanding that, getting it out in the open is really important. So if you have a preference, it's really important to let people know what that is. Just let them know, like if you've understood that about yourself and you know that it's going to make it easier for you to stay involved, then share it, let people know. And even encourage your group members to ask themselves these questions so that you can find out more about them. And maybe there's some communication problems that you've been having that are simply about, you're texting too much. You overwent the 3 text rule, or you're not, or vice versa. I'm just not as much of a phone person. Please let me know in a text, and you can start to negotiate what you all need. But just letting that information be known can just help alleviate a lot of issues. So, and as you know, like humans aren't great mind readers, right? I mean, some of us are awesome at predicting things, but we could even have the highest levels of social intelligence, but it's really tough to know exactly what someone needs. And that can be made even harder when your group is made up of a diversity of cultures, right? So it's not just about communication preferences. It's about what certain hand movements and how much social distance you have between yourself. Like all of these things have a meaning that you may not know simply because you're not of that culture. And so diversity is a wonderful thing. But we tend to understand each other even better across diversity, across cultures, when we're clear, when we're direct, right? We're not hoping that people understand our meeting. We simply make it easier for them to understand us. So with that in mind, because I know a lot of your groups are wonderfully diverse, a great way to start to do this is with group agreements. And some of you may know them as community agreements, or maybe ground rules is a close, it's closely related to group agreements. Basically, it's like a code of conduct. It's an understanding that your group has on how you all are going to behave with one another. But what I like about group agreements, as opposed to ground rules, is that everybody is involved. Everybody is a part of making that list of agreements. You can make a list of ground rules, of course, collaboratively, but the word rules versus agreements, right? Like agreement is commitment, right? A school, an institution can have their rules and everybody needs to follow them. But when you create group agreements, it's something very unique to the group, and everyone, if they want to participate, you can make this a requirement that they need to agree to everything that is on that list. So it can be things like in the photo that you see here. This was done with a garden group in Brooklyn. They listed, well, we need everyone to participate and give their opinion. We need everyone to be honest, to be upfront with one another. We need to hold to our word and follow through. We need to be involved. Step up, step back is something that describes if you are generally more talkative, that you step back and allow others the floor so that they have a chance to speak, and then vice versa, step back, step up if you are generally more quiet, but you have something to say, go for it. The floor is yours. So it helps to balance participation. So every member of this garden group offered their opinion on what they need from each other in order to have an effective and productive meeting. And every single member then agreed, yes, I will do that. I will make sure that everyone gets to participate. I will make sure that what I'm saying is honest, that I am upfront with you. I agree to be involved. I agree to step back when I'm holding a little too much space. I'm talking a little too much and not letting others be heard. So that moment alone is so much, it's such a foundation that you can build with your group of trust, really, right? If everyone's heard, if everyone's needs are heard, if everyone agrees to respect those needs, and if everyone in turn respects the needs, right? Then you are building trust. It's such a simple exercise, but it goes so far. And I will not work with the group unless we do this first. Because really, if you don't establish this, what are you working from? How do you know? How do you know how your group, like what your group needs and how you can possibly fulfill those needs? Just talk about it and come to an understanding. So here are some sample group agreements, and that garden group in Brooklyn had a number of them on there. So making sure everyone is able to contribute. Again, there's the step up, step back. You tend to be quieter, step up when you have something to say. If you tend to be talkative, step back and let others speak. Another popular one is the 1 mic rule. So only one person speaks at a time. This helps to limit interruption. Every idea is welcome, which is sometimes controversial, right? Because sometimes we can't entertain every idea, but to shut it down when it first is offered is not such a great idea if you want to keep the morale of your team up. So welcome all ideas and have a process for how you are going to just actually make a decision based on all the ideas that you've collected. It's okay to disagree by challenging what a person says, not attacking them, right? Be curious. I think Mark was talking about being inquisitive. Be curious about what someone is saying before challenging it, right? Just like check yourself a little bit. Take regular breaks. So now getting into more like housekeeping, and just make sure that the group is taking care of themselves physiologically, that you're taking regular breaks, and that you're fully present. Maybe your phones and your notifications are off. So those are just a few sample group agreements. This is a great list to start with. You can even present this to your group and ask them, like, does this match up with what we need? How do we need to tweak it? You could start with a blank page and just ask the question, what do we need from one another in order to have an effective meeting? You could like center it on just that meeting. You could have it apply to an entire process of working together, for a longer period of time. But I've seen group agreements go on. I've seen like 6 full flip chart pages of group agreements. They're so long. And while that might seem really tedious and dizzying, and it was dizzying to facilitate that, but It was worth it. That group got so much done. They heard one another. They made an agreement to take care of each other's needs. And because they had this discussion and it was written down for them to come back to every time they met, they were more likely to follow through with those agreements. So that team created a lot of trust just in that exercise. So trust is ultimate. It's a really critical foundation when it comes to communication. If you don't trust who you're speaking with, your ability to listen well, or even to like speak in a cooperative way, it just diminishes. It's natural. It's what we do as humans. And of course, you can't trust everyone right off the bat. Like you need to earn. Everyone needs to earn someone's trust. But you know, as you go through a relationship with someone, if you are coming back to a distrustful kind of emotion with someone, it's just really difficult to get past that emotion in order to communicate effectively. So when you're wondering how best to speak to someone in your group at all times, ask yourself the question, how can I say what I need to while building trust? Just get in that frame of mind. And that will be really helpful. So on that note, I've got a number of like in the moment techniques that I want to share with you. Oh, actually, not just yet. I have one more slide before we do that. Okay, so building trust requires, it also requires that you and your team members are aware of the limits of your own natural communication. So generally when we say something to others, we naturally assume that we're being heard. And when we hear what others have to say, we naturally assume that we understand them. And you know, generally, yeah, like we have conversations all the time, and we think we've got it together, right? But it's important not to just completely assume it all the time, especially when you're just starting a group or you're doing work together. It's really important to like be a little more careful in whether or not you are being heard and whether or not you actually do understand. I love this quote by George Bernard Shaw. It makes me laugh out loud. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. How do you know that it's taken place? Well, you ask, you find out. So you have to be, you have to remember that when we're working with others, that we're only ever aware of our message, our intentions, and the impact that others have on us. We're never fully aware unless we ask what their message is, what their intentions are, or what your impact is on them. That's always like, I have no idea what my impact is on. I have some sense given by the facial expressions that I can see from 9 of you, because I can't see all of you at the same time. I have some sense, but I can't possibly know what this is, you know, how my message is being received by you. So I need to lead with a bit of humility and know that, well, I can't be sure. So if it's important for me to find that out, then I must take steps to find it out. So we fill in the gaps of our knowledge by finding it out. And one of those ways is listening, right? Specifically, listening to understand. So when you're in listening mode, you need to put on a listening attitude in order to really understand what people are saying. Have a goal in mind that I'm going to do my best to understand what this person is saying. What's really natural and easy is that most of us listen to respond, right? We're listening so that we can get ready to say what we need to say. And as we're getting ready to say what we need to say, we miss a lot. We may think that we've got it all, but most of the time we actually miss a lot of the message that we're hearing from somebody else. So definitely, if your goal is to truly understand what someone has to say, take the time to really listen, with the goal of understanding. And even dressing up in this attitude that you don't already know what that person wants me to know. They have something to teach me. And if you're speaking face to face, that you need to convince them that you heard them. You need to be showing signs that they have been heard. All great attitudes to don, to dress up in. And some techniques that you can use are, I just got a couple here, paraphrasing and asking clarifying questions. So when you're paraphrasing, you're basically saying, once the speaker is done speaking, or even if they've had some time to, if they've been speaking for some time and you need to like check in that you actually have understood them correctly, you try to say back to them what you think you heard, and then check in that you got it right. Right? So some examples could be, so what you're saying is, I don't know the examples. What you're saying is, we need to work on group membership development. Is that right? That's a really, that's a little too, I wish I had come up with a more in-depth example, but paraphrasing is really useful when someone's talking about something a little more complex, right? Like you don't want to paraphrase a one sentence thing, right? Because duh, you've heard it. But checking in. So like, did I get it right? Or I'd like to see if I heard you correctly. If you're interrupting someone, to make sure that you're understanding them, make the statement, I want to see if I've heard you correctly. Then say what you think you heard, and then check in. Is that what you're saying? You can also ask clarifying questions. So Moana, I'm having a hard time following you, and I want to understand your point. Can you help me understand this? Right? If someone is saying something and you don't understand, like you're just not following, don't let them go on. Like stop them. Stop them. Like please stop them and ask, like, "Hey, I'm not following you. Help me understand. Help me catch up here. Is this what you're meaning? Is this what you're saying?" It's really important. I see this a lot, and I think there's a general shyness in interrupting people because we think that interrupting is just rude, but it's pretty darn rude to let someone go on talking when you're not listening, when no one's understanding it. So pay them that respect. Say, look, I really do want to understand what you're saying. So help me. Like, is this where you're coming from? Are we talking about this specifically, or where does this come in? Just ask those clarifying questions so that you can catch up and you can follow them. All right. I am looking at the time, 12:32. Okay. So that's all on listening. And now we're going to get into speaking. So I want to play with the scenario. You're tired of, so yeah, pretend this is you. You're tired of being the only one in your group picking up trash in the garden or the park, even after you've asked for help. There's a meeting coming up and you're determined to let everyone know what's on your mind. What do you say? So you can let us know in the chat box what you would say, what you want to say. This could be an expressive period if you want it to be. This is a safe space. But I'll give you a couple minutes. Like, what would you say to this? Thank you, Sawyer. Right, if you got an idea of what you want to say or what you would say, feel free to share it. We heard from Sohair Hassan. Please, can someone help me? Thank you very much. Very polite. Thank you. Casey, if I stay calm and could be direct, I would try to express that I feel overwhelmed and frustrated doing this work by myself. I'd ask for support from others. Nice. From Chantel. Hi, everyone. I'm sure we all appreciate and benefit from cleaning and inviting the garden. Are you aware that I'm the only one cleaning up? How do you think we should handle this? Nice. Tom, folks, our committee approach to picking up the trash is not working out. It is falling to one person. We need to review our process here. What do you think? Nice. From Mark, my approach would be to suss out if there's group agreement that trash is a problem. If it is a problem, is it the group's problem? If it is, then how do we deal with it as a group? Very nice. So being strategic about the issue itself. Carolyn, funny because we currently have a similar issue in our garden. I would say maybe we could come to an agreement about this. Nice. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. You are all so respectful and wonderful communicators. So for the purpose of a teachable moment, I pretended like I wasn't a very helpful person. I mean, sometimes I can be a not so helpful person. So maybe you really want to say this. No one has helped me even after I've asked for it. I'm tired of being the only one picking up trash. Right? Definitely conveys emotion. So why is this a problem? Well, even though this was really liberating to say, and it was liberating, even as I was drumming up this scenario and and writing this phrase, it could do some damage, right? If this was said to someone, because it implies blame, right? And blame is the #1 trust destroyer and conflict starter. The person that is receiving that comment would automatically go on the defense. It's not about the trash, it's about them and that how they haven't helped yet. And it got personal because they got called out for not helping. But it's still a problem that needs to be addressed, right? So, but there is a way to do this that's still assertive, still firm, not weak and, oh, please help me, or, still assertive, still firm, without sounding accusatory or blaming others. Also, something about this statement is that the last line, I'm tired of being the only one, right? It ends with a really negative emotion that no one knows how to deal with, right? If that's what you're leaving people with, then folks just really don't know which way to go, either to help you or to make sense of it with the group. So it's important to give people something to go with, and everybody has done that. Like, what do you think? How should we handle this? How do we deal with it as a group? Like, that's a great prompt that you all are coming up with. That helps people get into that mode of thinking positively, thinking strategically. Alrighty, so we are going to get around to a formula for how to respond to this, but I want to talk about a few things. Getting back to the me and team. So when you're speaking, mostly about anything, but especially about things that are really riling you up or that you're really passionate about, it's a good idea to focus on you first before focusing on others. So focus on your feelings, your beliefs, and not what you think the listeners are. So ask yourself, what am I feeling? What is my understanding of the situation? And what assumptions might I be making? And these can naturally transition into statements when you actually speak, right? Like, I feel this. My understanding is this. I assume this is happening. Is that right? So when you're coming at it from that I statement, you're taking responsibility for your own perception, which really matters a lot. So I statements, when you need to be assertive, I statements can come in real handy. And most people, I think, yeah, pretty much everyone was on this path when responding to that trash in the garden or trash in the park scenario. So I statements really help you to attract trust and respect because you're taking responsibility for your own thoughts, feelings, beliefs, your own perception. And it allows you to be assertive without making accusations, which can make listeners feel really defensive. But it's also not about being nice, right? Like, it's not, oh, like, I don't want to make people feel bad. You can still be assertive and respectful. It's totally possible. And I statements are a great way for you to do that. So it's a formula. You basically say, I feel, and you insert your own emotion when, and then you state the actual behavior, the action, because, and then you state the impact that it has on you. And what I need is, and you state like a positive action or behavior request. It's actually a request that you're making of folks. So you're taking a lot of responsibility, but you're not taking responsibility for the trash not being taken up. You're taking responsibility for your feelings, and then offering like, and this is how you can help. So if people can see, this is how it's affecting my own teammate, and they're giving me a clue on how we can make this better, or this is how this is affecting my teammate and my group. Right? It naturally, we're not on the defensive. We're getting into a mode of wanting to help, of wanting to respond, and responding to the request made versus a complaint or a really negative emotion. So let's see how this can translate. No one has helped me even after I've asked for it. I'm tired of being the only one picking up trash. If we converted that into an I statement, it could be something like, I feel frustrated when I've asked for help with picking up trash in the garden and no one responds, because it means a lot to me that we respect this place and I can't do it alone. What I need is for someone to please help me. So that's one example. And I'd love for you to try, but it is 12:42. So this is something that you can definitely try on your own. I do want to leave enough time for questions, but just play around with this formula. It really does help. Even if you don't actually say these words, it helps a lot. I found to, like, when I'm really ramped up about something, if I actually journal it out and use this formula, it makes me clearer about what actually is what I'm actually feeling, how it's impacting me, and how I can approach someone else. So it can be therapeutic for you individually. All right, so we did a ton of stuff. I went over a lot. I've talked way too long. So I want to just review a few key communication tips from today. So it's important to know thyself, how you like to communicate, build trust and a good foundation for communication through group agreements. Ask yourself, how can I say what I need to while building trust? Remember what you are aware of and unaware of. Listen to understand and don yourself with that listening attitude. Check in with yourself before speaking and using I statements when you need to be assertive. That is all I have, and I would love to hear from you. Questions, any communication tips that you have for the group? I'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you so much, Leʻalani. Do you want folks to put in the chat if they have questions?
Sure. Yeah. Or maybe there's a specific communication issue that you have and you want to try to workshop it with the group. How do you deal with belligerence? Can you help me understand a little more, Mark, what you mean by belligerence? Like, is there particular behavior? Oh, chat is slow. Okay.
Mark, I just took you off mute if you wanted to verbalize your question.
So somebody comes to a meeting just really, really angry and not able to listen, just this sort of force of fury without any clear kind of willingness or even ability to kind of engage in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of behavior.
Got it. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with that. That's really frustrating. And I can imagine really unproductive and unenjoyable. So I would go back to group agreements. If your group has decided that they will listen to each other respectfully, or you know, they'll, if they don't disagree with one another, to challenge, not attack, or just if there's a complaint, to have a positive request following it. Like if that's established as how your group has agreed to work together, then you can go back to those agreements. And I love having, like, if you write it on a flip chart paper, or if you have it in a document that you share with everyone, everyone has that reference and anybody can use it, right? Hey, we know that you feel passionate about this. We as a group have agreed that this is how we're going to talk about issues. You agree to do that, and put them on the spot. Say, like, can you agree, like the rest of us have agreed, to behave this way? And if they can't agree to do it, then you have every right to ask them to leave. Because that's a decision the group has made. And those agreements are pretty sacred. So, but I think establishing that, you need to have something that gives you that authority. And that's pretty substantial authority if every person in the group has agreed to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so a few more questions. Tiffany, people who don't know how to communicate, no matter how well you try to communicate with them. I feel you. And yes, we'll definitely encounter folks, like no matter how many great communication tips you use, but use them, like be sure you use them, try it, because it just might help with that situation. I found that being honest, I just, it's my style to just be direct and honest with people. Like, I'm sorry, I don't think you're not hearing what I'm saying. Can you give me a second? Like, and if they refuse, I'm like, look, you're not hearing what I'm saying, and I don't feel like being disrespected any longer. So, like just setting those boundaries can go a long way, and it may wake them up. They may dismiss you, and do you really want to have that relationship? Let's see, Chantel, I can temper myself and take time to get the emotion out of my messages in writing, but how do I do that without getting amped up in person? Totally feel you. Part of my frustration is that it seems there's a general lack of accountability in favor of inclusiveness and wanting everyone to kumbaya. I totally get you. At least I think I do. I think I get your message. I'm assuming that I get your message. So I think it's great that you're using writing to get your emotions out. This is actually part of a larger a social challenge that we have in our society of extroverted versus introverted communication styles, preferences, talents. So I'm not categorizing anyone, but if you need to take time to think through your thoughts, to write them down, it's excellent. You probably are giving a lot more careful thought, and when you do say something, it's really meaningful. Our society is pretty dominated by an extroverted form of communication. So quick thinkers, folks who are louder, or they're just really quick in what they need to say, they get heard, right? Like in the meeting, the person who speaks up, who has the time to, or who speaks up first, is the one who gets heard. So what you can try to request is having time to think. Like instead of okay, what does everybody think about this thing? Have the facilitator or the meeting leader ask a question to folks, and then give everybody a couple minutes to think about it, to then respond, because it really does create an unfair situation for folks who can think really quickly, rather than folks that just need a little more time to do that thinking. So make a request if you really want to do that. And with inclusiveness, it's a balance. It's a total balance, and it really gets back to your group values of and what your priorities are in terms of, like, is it inclusion all the time, no matter what, or is it inclusion for a specific purpose? And just being really mindful about where inclusion might be holding you back from accomplishing your other goals. And so it's really about having that conversation. I hope that I'm understanding you correctly. Let me know if I missed that. Okay. I don't know, Casey, if I'm trying to find questions that I haven't answered yet.
Yeah, looks like Norwin has a question. How do you deal with someone who thinks that he's always right? For example, when you tell them that something they did was not right to do, but then they just decide to justify their action.
Okay. So, and are you sure that you're right? I guess I would ask yourself that question. Is what I'm asking, or is what I think is right, actually like the truth? Because we all have different perspectives on what is right and what the truth is. And really, I think the only way to get past that is to have a conversation. So what it like, be curious, right? Lead with curiosity. Why'd you do that? Like, well, maybe not say like that, but like, I want to know why you did this. Like, just tell me about it. Help me understand why you did this. So maybe you can start to get to know the reasoning or the purpose behind it. And that can start to build more trust, and that person doesn't feel as attacked, like, oh, you're telling me what to do, you know? Why didn't you try finding out why I did what I did, right? Like, so lead with curiosity. That might help too. That might help the situation. And just as you said, they're trying to justify their action in every way possible. That sounds very defensive. So there's a reason why, and a pretty powerful reason why they've done what they've done. So find out, be curious.
Sure. And we have another question. It sounds like if someone is maybe like constantly off topic, like how to deal with that.
Okay. You can gently remind them, okay, we're talking about this now. So, and even like if you are facilitating a meeting, it's something that you can do pretty often. Even when people are on topic, you can say, yeah, so just a reminder, we are talking about this. Just so that everybody, yeah, can be on the same page. Sometimes if you have been designated as a facilitator or have that role in your group, subconsciously people are going to be looking to you for direction, and so just have that little reminder in it, in there, and yeah, kindly, or even have a parking lot. I don't know if that's a familiar term for folks. So if you are having a meeting, it's inevitable that people are going to go off topic, and that's fine. Like, you want people to be expressive. You don't want to, stuff the contributions that they're bringing forth to you, but just have a place for those things and have it be visible. So you can have a flip chart paper or a piece of paper, and right at the top, parking lot. I don't know why we came up with that term, parking lot. It's where you park the ideas that you'll get to later, right? You'll table them. And so it's important that since that person is talking, they want to talk about that, they're passionate about it, it's important to them. So let them know that they've been heard. Write it down, show it to them, say, we're going to get to this. Now let's get back to what we were talking about. Okay. Oh yeah, and a bike rack. Thank you, Casey, for our to get a little more vehicular modal equity out there.
Is there any last questions? We got a couple minutes left before we sign off. Some really good questions so far.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, I think a lot of common challenges and questions that come up with all sorts of groups that we, spend time working with. Great. Any last questions? I think we might be okay for now then. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Leʻalani, for this workshop. This is super helpful. I think the tools and kind of framework that you put together is really helpful for thinking about how we work with groups, especially in these really challenging times when people are dealing with a lot in their personal lives, and those extra pressures and stresses on garden groups. So I think these are some really helpful points to keep in mind, like you said, leading with curiosity and trying to focus on I statements so that we're really being respectful with each other, and trying to figure out how to work well together where people are building trust and really keeping our eyes on the prize with like the work that we're trying to do together. And let's see, looks like one or two more last questions in the chat. Dynamics of if there's like maybe challenges with garden leadership versus the rest of the members. I guess one last question is, what if everyone does not want a community agreement? Starting point, right?
Right. I'd find out why. Like, why don't you want to do this? And I find out why and propose, okay, can we try it? Can we just see how it goes? And if it's not working for us, then fine. But more often than not, I think folks will eventually agree to it. Or there's just a lot of, I mean, it could be that no one wants to agree to work together. But I could even provide, you know, some bullet points, if that's the case for you, Carolyn, of like reasons why it's a good idea. Like you get on the same page, your communication is easier. You're aware of needs that need to be fulfilled. These are all traits of, or like really successful groups, teams, organizations use this practice. Let's learn from them. Let's do this. So, but definitely ask why. Like, understand the resistance.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's really important to kind of keep in mind, how ultimately this is about helping our groups work better together. And it's not a waste of time by any means to make sure that you're tending to the group and the people within the group. So awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your questions, your comments, and being really participatory in this webinar, and for all the work that you're doing in your community gardens and in your neighborhoods right now. So yeah, thank you all so much again for tuning in. Again, we'll have more Lunch with Green Thumb webinars, so please continue to tune in and check on our website for future webinars. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Leʻalani.
Thank you all. Take care.
Take care.
That was real good, Leonani. Thanks. Glad to hear. Enjoy the sun if you can.